Welcome to another episode of Chat Sports Talk, and welcome to Week 3 of the College Football 2025-26 season. We definitely had a few games out there that scratched their heads a bit, and some that, not too surprised. Last week's competition, my 12 games actually went 7-5 again, so good, quite a few of those. Some of them did not see it pan the way they did. The Baylor SMU went into overtime, and Baylor was able to win that game in Dallas, which I called for. The Cyhawk Trophy battle between Iowa State, I thought Iowa was going to get it, but Iowa State showing their dominance of recent years of winning that game, but they struggled. So I'll take a little point in there. Liberty Jacksonville State showed the play. Liberty just looked all out of sorts in that game. Same thing with the Michigan-Oklahoma. Oklahoma came out guns a-blazing and just tamed the Wolverines. With Vandy, Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt was just too much for Virginia Tech's defense. Vanderbilt looks like a sneaky pick out there in SEC. And then Arizona State was being shut out by Mississippi State. Grab a hold of the lead late in the fourth quarter only to lose it and lost to the Bulldogs. Then they got to limp home and try to resurrect their career or their season. But now we're dealing with Week 3. I got 12 games on the docket for you. I did have 10 initially, but I decided to go with 12. There's a lot of games out there. A lot of these either deal with ranked versus ranked or undefeated versus undefeated. Yes, I understand it's early in the season, but this is the content I try to base my games on to present to you. So let's start in hot Atlanta, where the Georgia Tech will play host to 12th ranked Clemson. Now the Hornets are doing doing well this season. That good win out there in Boulder. They're too much for Gardner Webb last week. Clemson had to come from behind to beat Troy. Troy was shutting them out. That's why they're dipped a bit in the polls because of their lackluster performance against Troy. But all of a sudden, Klubnik and the rest of the team of Clemson all of a sudden start gelling. There's 2 games, over 400 yards passing, with 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, while the Jackets, Philo, over 370 yards with a touchdown and a pick. Rushing-wise, Haynes for the Jackets, over 150 yards with 2 touchdowns, while Randall for the Tigers, over 120 yards with 2 touchdowns. So they're almost identical on that front. Texas, I think, is one of these teams, once again, that's kind of flying under the radar right now. Sooner or later they'll get recognized in the rankings, and I really think they should, probably be higher. But there's still early in the season, a lot of games to play. This is going to be a marquee game for them in ACC play. This is a must-win for Clemson already this season. And analytics right now has it favor of Georgia Tech at 56%. The spread right now is Clemson at 6.5. So Vegas sees it one way, analytics sees another way. I like the the Yellow Jackets in this one. Georgia Tech, I see be able to hold back a late Clemson charge and escape with a victory. Now we head down to Tuscaloosa, where the Crimson Tide play host to the Badgers of Wisconsin. Right now, Wisconsin coming in undefeated, and of course Alabama getting blown out Tallahassee, but then they just demolished Louisiana Monroe. So they took on the cupcake. Wisconsin's games so far have not been, their opponents haven't been that great. They struggled against Miami, Ohio, but ended up winning 17-0 in their first game, and then beat Middle Tennessee 42-10. And O'Neal looks competent enough, over 400 yards passing with 4 touchdowns but 2 picks. Simpson, on the other hand, has 480 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. But once again, look at who they played last week. So numbers are inflated for Alabama. Rushing-wise, almost identical, 100-yard rushers. But Jones for the Badgers, a little bit more on the positive side of the 100 with at least a touchdown. Defensive-wise, I think they'll look about the same. But if Wisconsin can go after Alabama like Florida State did, Alabama's going to be in some trouble. The only things I think are going to be saving Alabama that's down in their home turf, so the humidity factor will kick in and will probably affect Wisconsin. Right now, analytics has an 89% Alabama. They gave Alabama a 19.5-point spread. They are doubting the Badgers in this game. I would take Wisconsin for the points. This is not the Crimson Tide in Nick Saban's era. This is a different Tide. They're not as dominant as they should be, according to their fan base. I do think that Simpson and Riley should put up good numbers against the Badgers, but I also think O'Neal and Jones should put up good numbers against the Tide. So I do think this game is going to be extremely close, but I think it's just the heat down there in Alabama. It's going to play more into the Tide's hand. And I see them escaping an upset bid. You want to say it that way because of how everyone's favoring Alabama right now. They're ranked, but Wisconsin's not. But they'll squeak past Wisconsin, probably with like a 6-point victory, but I am going with the Tide. Now we head up to Rocky Top, or a top 15 clash in the SEC between undefeated Tennessee and undefeated Georgia. Georgia last week was just struggling mightily against Austin Peay. They really couldn't break away from them, and that hurt them in the polls. Tennessee, on the other hand, had demolished East Tennessee State. Over 500 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. Thomas, over 106 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns for the Volunteers. For the Bulldogs, Stockton, over 400 yards passing with 2 touchdowns. And Frazier, over 110 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. So almost identical, but I think Tennessee's offense is running a little bit better than Georgia's right now. Defense-wise, they look almost the same. Joseph for the Vols already has 2 sacks of the season, so he's definitely going to be a factor in that Georgia backfield if they can't find ways to prevent him from getting back there and disrupting anything. Tennessee will park off of points. If you look what they did with Syracuse kept to the game, except towards the end. That's when they finally, Tennessee's able to break free. So I expect Georgia and Tennessee to be neck and neck for a lot of this. And right now, analytics has it 51% for Tennessee, but this point spread right now is at Georgia at 6.5. Once again, you see both sides being played on this one. Tennessee should sneak out Rocky Top and cage the Bulldogs and take a commanding lead in the SEC. And now we head up to West Lafayette, Indiana for a Big Ten showdown between undefeated Purdue and undefeated USC. Their previous games, nothing really to write home about. USC's defense has coughed up more points, so that plays into Purdue's hand a bit, but otherwise it's not. But Purdue's defense is going to have their hands full with the Trojans. Right now, Maivia, over 700 yards in the air, 6 touchdowns, but they've taken on Georgia Southern and Missouri State, so don't read into much of that. Jordan, over 200 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns, while Purdue, Brown, over almost 500 yards with 4 touchdowns in the pick, and Maccabee, 185 yards on the ground with 3 touchdowns. So it's going to be up to that defense to find out, how good they could really be. Like I said, USC has coughed up points, so I do expect Purdue to put points on the board. USC is going to be too much. I think they'll probably almost double up USC or Purdue, possibly. Right now, analytics is almost 93% in favor of USC. USC is favored by 21.5. They're going off of numbers against mid-majors. So I can see them putting up maybe like 40 points. So it's like maybe 39-24 type of game. So I don't know, 21 points is a good spread there. So I might take Purdue for the points just to get, break it up a little bit. But I do think USC will overpower the Boilermakers to go 3-0 and 1-0 in conference play. Then the return of the backyard brawl between Pitt and West Virginia. Pitt right now is undefeated. West Virginia had a disappointment last week, losing in Ohio. Not the Ohio State, but the Ohio Bobcats of the MAC. They lost 17-10. That's something going to haunt them for this season. And Pitt's games are nothing to really write home about either. I mean, they walloped Duquesne, outgunned Central Michigan, so nothing to really to be too optimistic about. But for the Panthers, Holstein, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, a 4-to-1 ratio. Yes, please. Over 500, almost 520 yards passing. Reed, over 110 yards on the ground with a touchdown. And for the Mountaineers, Mark Hoyle, over 400 yards with a touchdown interception, while White, over 130 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. If the Pitt Panthers can stop the West Virginia rushing attack, that should help out a lot. I mean, try to keep Wilson out of that backfield to get those sacks this year. He leads both teams right now with 3 sacks already so far this season with just 2 games played. But right now, analytics has it at 59% for Pitt. They also give Pitt a 5.5-point spread. I, too, like Pitt in this one. I think they should be able to stink out of Morgantown with the win and notch another mark on their belt in this backyard brawl. All right, now we're heading down to South Beach, where the 5th-ranked Hurricanes will host the 18th-ranked South Florida. Both teams are undefeated. That's right, you heard me correct. South Florida is now ranked. When you beat back-to-back ranked opponents, that tends to happen, especially when you go into Gainesville, the swamp, to beat Florida. You tend to get noticed. Then the manhandling Boise State as well. But, right now there's no love for South Florida in this game. And South Florida is trying to start the season off with 3 ranked opponents, try to win all 3 games. The last team to do that is Miami many moons ago. Right now for the Bulls, Brown has over 470 yards but only 1 touchdown. But he also has over 100 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. So definitely a dual threat you have to worry about. But Carson Beck for the Hurricanes, over 470 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then Fletcher in the backfield for the Canes with over 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. A lot of weapons with Miami. But if you remember in that Notre Dame game, they coughed up a lot too. So they found their groove against the Irish. And then, of course, they blew out BCU, which, doesn't mean much. But the fact that South Florida is being tenacious and how they handled Florida as well, going in there, coming back to win that game, keeping them within striking distance the entire game, that defense was a key factor. The defense for the Bulls should hamper Miami. Analytics right now favor Miami at 72%. The point spread is ridiculously in favor of Miami at 15.5. This is a slap in the face of South Florida. They should get into the face of Beck and the rest of the Hurricanes and really try to establish their dominance early in the game. I do think Miami will win this game, but I do not believe this point spread. I do think it's going to be a lot closer. It's going to be similar to that Notre Dame game or that Florida game for the Bulls. Very, very close. Probably wait till the last minute or sometime in the 4th quarter where that's when it finally breaks. And Miami's able to snap South Florida and get that victory. At the most, I think will be 10. At the most. So I'll take South Florida for the points, but Miami should come out with a victory. Flash of unbeatens in SEC, as Ole Miss will play host to Arkansas out there in Oxford. I mean, Ole Miss had a great game against Kentucky. Struggled, but then winning up in Lexington. They already start their season 1-0 in conference play. Let them get that second win. Simmons for the Rebels, over 570 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns, but 4 picks. He definitely has to watch his accuracy because he's 33, 55 passing, so not very accurate thrower, especially when you throw 4 picks. Doesn't really help. But Lacey in the backfield, over almost 250 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. That's going to be the key for the Rebels, is to make sure that they establish that running game. Establish that running game, that should really alleviate some of the issues Simmons might have in the secondary and be able to find receivers and eliminate his interceptions. For the Hogs, or the Razorbacks, depending on how you want to go about this, Green, 560 yards in the air, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, so a 5-to-1 ratio. But, that's against Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State. So, not really that stiff competition. But Washington, close to 200 yards on the ground and only 1 touchdown. So, if Ole Miss secondary can hamper Green and try to have Washington beat him with their legs, or have Green beat him with their legs, that's what Ole Miss defense will have to do, is force them to get away from the comfort of being an aerial team and run. And that's what's going to have to be. Right now, analytics has it at 74% for Ole Miss. The point spread's at 8.5 in favor of Ole Miss. I agree with both of those statements. I do think Ole Miss will win this game, go 2-0 conference play, 3-0 overall, and put themselves in a very good position in SEC. But I think Arkansas should make this a little bit interesting. Staying in SEC, let's head down to Baton Rouge, where the undefeated Tigers will play host to Florida. The Gators just looked all out of sorts against South Florida. They could not get anything going. Bill Napier's already under fire this season. There's already rumblings in the swamp to get him canned. Just how lackluster they were against South Florida. I mean, they started the season with a great win against Long Island. At LSU, they had that struggle against Clemson, but that was expected, and they came out on top of that game. Didn't look very good against Louisiana Tech either, but still won that game 23-7. Nussmeier should do a lot better. He's almost 470 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns and an interception, which is a bad thing. He needs to be able to find the pay dirt and not be able to do that. They produced the yards, but they ended up going on the ground for the touchdowns, because Durham over 100 yards with 2 touchdowns. On Florida side, Lagway, 340 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, interception. A little more consistent numbers than Nussmeier, but Ball, almost 200 yards on the ground and a touchdown. He needs to be able to find the pay dirt. He's a great bruiser for the Gators to try to establish a running attack, but that LSU defense should play havoc because they only coughed up 17 points all season. Of course, it's only 2 games. So it's something you have to take into factor, and they nullified Klubnik and the Tigers on week 1. I don't expect Lagway to get much success going against this defense in week 3. Right now, analytics favor LSU at 62%. The spread right now is in favor of LSU at 8.5. I think LSU might win by more. I really think Florida's going to be in some serious trouble. Napier is going to be on the hot seat after this game. There's no question about that. And shutdown up at South Bend as the undefeated 16th-ranked A&M Aggies take on the 8th-ranked Fighting Irish Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a great game against Miami, came up short. The rookie quarterback Carr, was phenomenal. I mean, his passing accuracy is terrible, but that's just one game. 220 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns, interception. They need to get that running attack going with Price. That was kind of missing as well. But the defense was trying to do their best part to keep everything intact. A&M right now has got some studs on offense. Reed, over 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. He also has over 100 yards on the ground with a touchdown. So Notre Dame's going to have a hard time keeping Reed in check, because if you take away his running game, he's going to beat you with his arm. That's something you're going to have to worry about. And then try to keep Howell out of that backfield to keep Carr upright, because right now he has 3 sacks already so far this season. But let's look at who A&M's taken on so far. UTSA and Utah State. But, beat them on average 43-23. So I have a feeling Notre Dame is going to put up points on A&M. The defense doesn't seem to be that spectacular. It's the offense that the Irish are going to have to worry about, and that's going to be an issue for them. But I do think it should be an interesting game right there on Saturday night. Irish right now are favored 71% analytically. Right now the line has it at Irish at 9.5. I'll take A&M for the points. I don't think the Irish are going to win by that much. I do like the Irish winning. I do think this will be a close game. A&M's going to make the Irish fight for everything, and that's no problem. I mean, I like those type of games. I want to see the struggle. I don't want to see blowouts. I just want to see teams, try to dominate one side of the line or the other, and that's going to be the key in this game. And Carr needs to, pick his right opportunities, take what the defense can give him. And same thing with Reed. Reed's got to do the exact same thing against the Irish. But I do like the Irish winning this one. I think it's going to be kind of close to like a 31-27 type of affair. But I think the Irish are going to be able to sneak out South Bend and give an L to A&M for this season. The 11th ranked Gamecocks, undefeated, take on undefeated Vanderbilt in a game I think it's under the radar right now in SEC play. Because both Sellers and Pavia are probably 2 good quarterbacks and not getting a lot of attention. Both of them have some decent numbers so far this season. Sellers over 330 yards in the air and 2 touchdowns. Pavia over 460 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns and a pick. Running-wise, Attaway only 80 yards with a touchdown, but Alexander for the Commodores over 150 yards with 2 touchdowns. And they both took on Virginia Tech. And Vanderbilt doubled up Virginia Tech while South Carolina struggled towards the end and finally escaped Virginia Tech 24-11 in the opening week, while Vanderbilt blew them out 44-20. So Vanderbilt's defense definitely going to give Sellers and the Gamecocks all that they can handle. I think this is going to be a great game between these two that I think is flying under the radar nationally. This is definitely one of these games you want to keep an eye on, because Vanderbilt should make some noise in SEC play if they can keep the team together and put up some good wins. This is going to be a key matchup in SEC. They're not going to win everything. They're going to make some noise. This is definitely a noisemaker game right here. Analytics favor South Carolina at 65%. They also give South Carolina a 5.5-point spread. I'm taking Vanderbilt, in case you haven't garnered this one. I like the idea of the Commodores this year. They look really good. They finished strong last year. Trying to make some noise towards the end. They just couldn't quite get there. It fell short a couple times. But this is definitely a team I think is going to be on the verge of getting in that top maybe 4, 5 in SEC rankings. West, let's get out to Berkeley. UC Berkeley's Cal will play host to Minnesota. Don't you know? Both teams are undefeated so far this season. There's why I picked this game up. I mean, they have really taken on anyone that difficult. But Minnesota's defense is a little bit better, only allowed 10 points thus far, while Cal's allowed 18. Minnesota's beaten Buffalo and Northwestern State, while Cal's knocked off Oregon State and Texas Southern. said, nothing to really write home about, but definitely, they put up some good numbers. For the Gophers, Lindsey, almost 430 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns in the pick. Taylor out of the backfield, 160 yards, but no touchdowns. For the Bears and their quarterback, Saga, I'm not going to try to pronounce this name. Good grief, son. I am terrible with names, so I'm not going to attempt to butcher this one. So, Jerron, 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, interception. While Raphael, almost 160 yards on the ground and a touchdown coming out of the backfield. Defensive-wise, they both got pretty much identical numbers. So this is definitely, I think, going to be kind of a game of attrition right now. Analytics favor Minnesota at 52%. They also give the Gophers a 2.5-point spread. I think I'm going to take Cal. Once again, I'm bucking against the trend here. But Minnesota always seems to have a decent year. They always have a game outside of conference. Always they slip up on. I think this one might be it. So I'm going to take Cal to sneak one past Minnesota. And then we're over to Laramie, Wyoming, as the undefeated Cowboys play host to the undefeated Utah Utes, who ranked number 20. Big showdown out there in the mountains. Now for Utah, I mean, that huge win against UCLA kicked things off, and then they dominate Cal Poly, start the season off. And then you look at Wyoming. They struggled against Akron, but they beat them 10-0. And they got past Northern Iowa 31-7. So Anderson for the Cowboys, over 420 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns and interception, while Scott coming out of the backfield, almost 200 yards and a touchdown. For the Utes, Dampier, almost 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, and Parker, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns out of the backfield. Defensive-wise, Daly for the Utes already has 3 sacks already this season. Definitely something to watch out for. But I do think Wyoming should kind of make this somewhat close. Right now, analytics hugely favored Utah at 93%. They give Utah a 22.5-point spread. And I think they don't take into effect the weather out there in Wyoming. Especially with the wind coming in. So it's definitely going to play havoc for a bit. With that being said, I do think that Utah should win. I'm not sure about the 21 points. I do think it will be double, probably 14-17. So I may take Wyoming for the points just because I have a feeling they could, keep it in there, especially if the weather is on their side. That should help them out. But I think there's just too much of the Utes to really try to contain, and Utah should really try to dominate themselves and just try to establish a good running attack and just pound the Cowboys into the dirt. But I do think they should win probably at least by 17. So I'm taking Utah to win on my last game of this week. Well, there you go. Those are my 12 games. Most of the games, like I said, either they're all undefeated or they're all ranked. So a lot of interesting matchups, especially early in the season. We'll see how things start to play out when you get deeper in the conference schedule. But, hey, let me know down below what you think of my picks. Which one you think got completely wrong? Which ones am I drinking the wrong stuff? Because apparently this is not filled with water. I think I said that in a video before. Well, let's mix it up the comments below. The more we interact, the better it helps the YouTube algorithm. You all monitor the YouTube algorithm. That ensures we get the right stuff to pleases our frontal cortex. Another thing you do to help this video out is to hit the like button. Another thing to help this channel out is to subscribe. Now, if you do, it actually costs you absolutely nothing. Absolutely free. That's right. In this day and age, in this economy, free is always good. And the only thing to do is hit that subscribe button, click that bell icon, turn on notification. Next time I post any more content on my channel. And I will see you next time. Chat Sports Talk.